Can we actually be friendly with Iran and Saudi Arabia at the same time? I don't think so. Well, joining me to discuss this vexing issue is Professor Michael Clarke, Senior Fellow at the Centre for Defence Research and previously served on the House of Commons Foreign Affairs Committee. Good evening, Michael.
Yes, hello.
Do you understand my confusion about Boris going to Saudi Arabia, hoping that they were going to be very nice to him and say, yes, of course, we will increase oil production and sell you some, whilst at the same time, the West is beginning to pivot back towards the Iran nuclear deal?
Yes, these are, two difficult policies running in tandem. Politics is never neat, as you know. The timing is always lousy for these things. So, Joe Biden had already opened the door to speaking to Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, as he's known, in Saudi Arabia. He didn't want to talk to him. He wanted to keep up this sort of diplomatic embargo following the murder of Khashoggi, the journalist Khashoggi, more or less certainly on MBS's orders. And Boris, in a way, was following Biden's lead by saying, "Yeah, we've just got to deal with this." The exigencies of the moment, because of the crisis created by the war in Ukraine, are that we've got to find a way of persuading the oil producers to increase production, partly to, as we put more oil onto the market, but also to keep the prices a bit lower since they're zooming up. And this is the sort of thing I'm sure he wouldn't have wanted to go now. But there was a feeling that I think he had to try. He's used up a lot of diplomatic credit in being seen to go, not just to talk to Mohammed bin Salman, but to go there almost cap in hand. And he's come away with very little. Downing Street have been very tight-lipped tonight, saying, well, it's not all about coming back with something. It's not all about coming back with a deal that OPEC will increase production. It's about long-term conversations, long-term perspectives on stability in the oil market. Well, fine, you could have done that from Downing Street.
Yeah, but I'm struck, where is the long-term relationship with Saudi Arabia if we see a recast Iran nuclear deal? And it does appear that Joe Biden is very keen to do it. The European Union are keen to do it. And as you know, when Boris Johnson was Foreign Secretary, he was publicly very supportive of it. We can't be friends with both, can we?
Well, you can. That's the point. You're trying to balance those two things. You don't want to get involved in the feud, and it is a long-term historical feud between the Saudis and the Iranians. What you're trying to do is keep the diplomatic lines open to both, because we have different interests with both. And the point is that Trump withdrew from the original deal, and the result of that withdrawal is that the Iranians are now a lot closer to nuclear weapons than they were with the deal. Remember, the deal was a 10-year moratorium on any more activity on that front. And in wrecking the deal, the Iranians are now much closer than they were. So what Biden and the Europeans and Britain are keen to do is get some deal in place to at least restrain that. It's not as good as what we had before, but it's better than just letting the Iranians go off saying, well, you can't trust the Americans, you can't trust the West, we're going nuclear hell for leather. They're not going to do that now. They are trying to get a nuclear weapon, but we've slowed the process down again. See what happens. When all other policy areas fail, it's not the worst thing in the world just to play for time. And that's really what the powers are doing in Iran. We're playing for time because every other type of policy to try to prevent Iran going nuclear has failed.
But the counter-argument to that, Michael, very strongly is that that deal being put in place in Obama's time did enrich Iran, that some of that money was used to fund and spread terrorism right across the region, and that's pretty much undisputed that they did that.
True.
And furthermore, many say that actually they completely ignored the idea that they weren't going to go on with their nuclear weapons development program. So they were getting money, funding terrorism, and carrying on with the program anyway.
Now, well, two things there, Nigel. One is that they didn't do that. They did stick to the nuclear part of the deal. They may not have intended to in the very long term, because they are determined to become nuclear sooner or later, that's for sure. But they did stick to the deal. And there's a dirty little secret in all of this, is that when we complain that they were using money to do other things, that they didn't sort of pull back on their support for Hezbollah or for what they were doing in Iraq, the fact is we were the ones, when it came to doing the deal, we were the ones who said keep it to nuclear issues. It was the Iranians Iranians originally who said, we want to discuss this and this and this. And we said, no, we don't want to give them too much wiggle room. So it was the Western powers who said, stick to the nuclear issues. And so the Iranians did stick to the nuclear issues, and they did begin to implement those parts of the deal, but they didn't restrain their activities elsewhere. And it was the American Congress and American Republicans who said, why did we do the deal when the Iranians are behaving so badly? And the truth was, we left all those behaving badly bits out of the deal because we wanted to stick to the nuclear bit. So, nobody comes out of this completely cleanly, but it's very unjust. It's very unjust to say that the Iranians, as it were, did not restrain themselves elsewhere when we were the ones who actually made them stick to just the nuclear parts of the deal.
No, that's a very, very good point, strong point. It shows, in some ways, how bad the deal was. It's an imperfect world.